Imagine if your electricity bill suddenly included a line item called AI usage. Same meter, same grid, but now it's your chatbot, your trading bot, your search engine. That's basically what Europe just announced in Munich. An AI grid, treated like a public utility, aimed straight at the power of US big tech and China. Welcome back to the comment section with Thomas Paul. Today we're breaking down the EU's new sovereign AI grid and what it means for your portfolio, your data, and the balance of power in the AI race. So, picture the Munich Cybersecurity Conference. Officials, security experts, the whole world is on fire but coffee is free vibe. In that setting, a company called Embedded LLM stands up and says, "We're launching the EU AI grid." Not another app, not a cute little model demo. An actual infrastructure grid designed to make AI work like electricity across Europe. Here's where things get interesting. Their first node isn't in Paris or Berlin, it's at Telecentras, a state-owned telecom operator in Lithuania, switched on January 22, 2026. That's symbolic. Europe is saying, this isn't a Silicon Valley side project. It's a sovereign infrastructure play, plugged into real networks, in real countries, under European law. The idea, instead of sending your data to a handful of American or Chinese hyperscalers, AI runs on a federated network of local nodes. Those nodes sit in European data centers, using local hardware, local power, local jobs. AI becomes something you meter, tax, and regulate, like electricity or water. When the founders talk about this grid, they frame it very bluntly. Keep AI value, jobs, and profits in Europe, not leaking to someone else's balance sheet. This is not a rumor, not a leaked memo. It's an early-stage initiative, but it's public, it's announced, and it lines up perfectly with what Brussels has been hinting at for years. But it's even getting worse because to understand this move, you have to zoom out to the politics. Right next door, the Munich Security Conference is happening. You've got Marco Rubio flying in as U.S. Secretary of State, Christine Lagarde from the European Central Bank, EU leaders, NATO people, all talking security, energy, and economic resilience under pressure. For years, European leaders have warned about digital sovereignty. In plain English, they don't want their critical systems, banks, hospitals, governments, media, running entirely on infrastructure owned by a few U.S. companies or plugged into Chinese tech. We've already seen the legal side of this. GDPR clamping down on data, the AI Act trying to set guardrails on high-risk systems. Those were the rules. The AI grid is the pipes and power stations behind those rules. An EU official recently said Europe needs to avoid dependence that can be weaponized, whether it's gas, chips, or data. That's the mindset here. If AI really is the new electricity, Brussels wants its own power plants, not a forever subscription to someone else's. And here's where things take a step further. Let's talk money, because none of this is charity. The European AI and cloud market is already worth tens of billions of dollars a year and growing fast. Global estimates for AI-driven productivity gains run into the trillions over the next decade. Whoever controls the infrastructure that runs those models doesn't just earn fees. They influence how capital flows, what gets built, and who skims the margins. Christine Lagarde has been crystal clear that Europe needs productivity growth to deal with aging populations and sticky inflation. Recent euro area forecasts she discussed put growth only around the 1 to 1.5% range, with inflation still hovering near, but not comfortably under, 2%. AI, if managed well, is supposed to be the lever that turns that into something more sustainable without blowing up prices. Right now, a huge chunk of AI capex, those massive data centers, GPUs, cloud contracts, flows into U.S. mega-cap names. We've seen AI-heavy stock indices rip higher double digits in a matter of months as everyone prices in, AI will save us all. Meanwhile, many European telcos and data center operators trade at much lower multiples. If the EU AI grid works, some of that capex and profit margin can be redirected toward local operators, regional clouds, and European AI vendors. That could shift earnings, valuations, and even the long-run strength of the euro. More domestic investment and higher productivity can mean stronger currency and potentially higher bond yields if growth genuinely improves. But then the unbelievable thing happened. Once you treat AI infrastructure like a utility, regulators start looking at it like a utility. This is where financial markets come in. There's already a push to treat financial AI, everything from trading algorithms to robo-advisors, as critical infrastructure. Research projects like new evaluation labs for financial multimodal models and big conferences on AI and markets show regulators and academics are not asleep at the wheel. They're actively testing how these systems behave under stress. A sovereign AI grid gives supervisors a clearer battlefield. If major banks, brokers, and credit platforms plug into regulated AI nodes, authorities can, in theory, monitor systemic risk better. They can see how models are making credit decisions, how trading bots behave in a flash crash, how sentiment models react to war headlines. On the flip side, utility-style regulation can easily turn into innovation, but please fill out these 400 forms first. Too much red tape, and you slow down the very AI productivity gains policymakers are counting on. For investors, that means you might trade a bit of US-style, move fast and break things upside for a more stable, slower European curve. But then he said this unbelievable thing. Reactions to the AI grid announcement have been, let's say, divided. On X, you've got one camp cheering, finally, Europe stops renting its future from big tech. They see the grid as the backbone for a sovereign AI ecosystem. Local chips, local data, local jobs. In that view, this is Europe learning from relying on Russian gas and saying, we're not repeating that with data and compute. The other camp is more skeptical. This will be another over-regulated, underfunded EU project that can't match US or Chinese scale. They worry that by the time Brussels committees finish debating node governance, OpenAI version 19 and 3 new Chinese models will have already lapped them. Financial media coverage has echoed that split. Some headlines leaning bold sovereignty move, others warning about bureaucracy and fragmentation. Same story, different framing. It reminds me of when I worked at a local newspaper in college and saw how the same economic data could become crisis looms or recovery underway, depending on what you wanted to sell. Markets, of course, don't wait for perfect clarity. On announcement day, you saw small moves. Some European cloud and telco names ticking up, some US AI leaders wobbling a bit as traders game out regulatory risk in Europe. Nothing decisive, and you should never overread one day of price action. That's noise, not a thesis. Here's where things get interesting. So what do you actually do with this as a retail investor or finance nerd who cares about politics? First, this is not financial advice. I'm not your advisor. I'm just the guy who watched his parents lose most of their savings because they trusted the wrong expert and decided to read the footnotes ever since. Always do your own research and talk to someone qualified before moving money. What I'd watch now are 3 things. Number 1, follow-on policy from Brussels and the ECB. Do they start talking about AI infrastructure in the same breath as energy, payments, and banking? If Lagarde and others put AI grids into their speeches on productivity and resilience, that's a signal. Number 2, which listed companies get named as partners or node operators? If your boring local telco quietly becomes a key AI grid node, that changes its story over a 5 to 10-year horizon. I've made some of my best investments by backing boring infrastructure while everyone else chased shiny hype. It's slow, but slow can work. Number 3, how the grid prices compute and data access. If AI really becomes a metered service with clear tariffs for banks, startups, and governments, that will shape who can compete. Cheap, predictable pricing might turbocharge European AI adoption. Expensive, politicized pricing could scare everyone back to US clouds, but it's even getting worse. From here, I see 3 big scenarios. 1, the EU AI grid fizzles. It stays niche, underfunded, and most serious AI workloads stay on US hyperscalers. In that world, not much changes. US tech keeps its margins. Europe remains a regulation superpower, not an infrastructure one. 2, it coexists with big tech. Some sectors, government, healthcare, finance, are nudged onto the sovereign grid for security reasons, while startups and consumer apps stick with global clouds. Investors would then need to separate regulated AI plays from free market AI plays inside Europe. 3. The grid actually becomes a real alternative. It scales, attracts talent, and delivers reliable, fairly priced compute across the euro area. That could support stronger growth numbers, more local AI champions, and a bit more geopolitical leverage for Europe when it sits at the table with Washington and Beijing. One more thing before we wrap. This entire video was created with Fludge.io, the same system that powers this channel. If you're watching and thinking, I'd love to run a YouTube channel like this, but I don't want to be on camera, that's exactly what it's built for. Fludge researches, writes scripts, creates thumbnails, uses an AI avatar, and can even upload to YouTube for you. You stay in control, jump in where you want, and over time it learns your style. It's not low-effort spam. If it were, you wouldn't still be here. So, what do you think? Should AI be run like a public utility, with meters and regulators, or left mostly to the market and big tech? Drop your take in the comments. I read them, I learn from them, and sometimes I steal your lines. If you found this breakdown useful, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with one friend who still thinks AI is just about chatbots. This is the comment section with Thomas Paul. See you in the next one.